Welcome on board the Ocean, one of the world's greatest railway journeys and the oldest named passenger train on the entire North American continent. In this video, I'll be taking you on board one of North America's most unique sleeper trains as we travel for almost 24 hours and over 800 miles from Halifax, Nova Scotia to Montreal, Quebec, as we enjoy the scenery, dining car and comfort of this private ensuite sleeper cabin. Now join me as the journey continues. Halifax is not only the most eastern terminus for Canada's national railway Via Rail, but also on the entire North American continent. The current station before us was first opened in 1928, but the railways here long predate this, having been in Halifax since 1858. The station is plugged right in the heart of the city. There are local bus and taxi options to get here, but I stayed right next door at the station's hotel, which will become relevant later. There isn't much in the main station concourse nowadays, but you will at least find manned ticket kiosks as well as numerous memorabilia highlighting the importance of the railways in Canada. The 19th century architecture here also makes this station a designated Canadian National Heritage Site, but despite this, there's only one train that departs from here 3 days a week, which is what we're here to catch. Via Rail train number 15, the Ocean, the oldest named passenger train in North America, leaving for Montreal at 11:30. The station even has a passage to the Westin Nova Scotia hotel I stayed in the night before, and through here is where you'll find the station lounge, available for passengers travelling in sleeper accommodation such as myself. A great place to unwind and grab a drink or snack ahead of the long journey up to Montreal. Speaking of which, you'll need to check in with the staff at this kiosk here ahead of boarding, which is also where you can check your luggage in through to your destination. Here, I also made my dining car reservation for lunch and got a wristband indicating I'm in a sleeper berth. That all being done, it was time to board 30 minutes ahead of departure. The Ocean has some of the most unique and interesting rolling stock in North America. At the rear of the consist are stainless steel Chateau series sleeper cars that date back to 1954, being built for the Canadian Pacific Railway by the Budd Company. Each of the 29 carriages built is uniquely named after individuals who made significant contributions to Canadian history, as seen here. However, what we're after is further along the platform. The leading carriages are Renaissance coaches, which were actually built by Metro Camel in Birmingham, England, back in the 1990s. These 200 km/h capable coaches are built to the British loading gauge and were originally intended to operate the proposed Night Star overnight services from London, Wales and Scotland through the Channel Tunnel to Paris, Brussels and destinations in the Netherlands and Germany. This project was supposed to complement the daytime Eurostar offer still operating today. However, various factors such as the lack of commercial viability and the rise of budget airlines ultimately led to it being cancelled. Via Rail then purchased all 139 carriages in 2000 at fire sale prices, some of which were also used on the Quebec City to Windsor corridor services until being replaced by the Venture sets in 2024. Look closely and you can even see the old Night Star logo, and I'm sure you'll agree, it's certainly something seeing a British and North American carriage side by side. The main problem with the use of these carriages in Canada is they're the least accessible carriages in the entire Via Rail fleet. Despite being retrofitted with steps to accommodate the lower height of Canadian platforms, boarding is sadly still relatively difficult for those with reduced mobility. I checked in with the attendant towards the front of the train, and after remembering how narrow the corridors are on British sleeper trains, I quickly found my berth. I have solo occupancy of my sleeper cabin, which hosts up to 2 people, and all Renaissance car cabins are en suite, as we'll see later. Upon entering, you'll be greeted by several bottles of water and a Ving keycard, which is used to access the room like so. Our route will first see us head east before travelling northwest into New Brunswick as we continue towards Quebec. We do make a number of stops, including request ones ahead of our arrival into Montreal the following morning. Our transcontinental journey taking 23 hours and 24 minutes to cover a distance of 1,343 kilometers or 835 miles.
There's a minimum of 4 emergency windows per car. We invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy your journey with us. Thank you and have a pleasant trip. Bon après-midi. Au nom de BRL Canada, nous vous souhaitons la bienvenue à Bedtime numéro 15, l'Océan. BRL reconnaît les territoires autochtones ancestraux et traditionnels sur lesquels nos trains circulent.
We depart Halifax right on time, commencing our mammoth 24-hour journey to Canada's second largest city. One thing to make note of as we leave is the former Pier 21, just adjacent to the station. The last surviving seaport immigration facility in Canada, it acted as a gateway for almost 1 million immigrants over the 20th century, many of whom would take the ocean to settle further in inland Canada. This train is not named as such for its coastal views, rather more for its links between inland Canada and the Atlantic coast in Halifax. The closest we get to coastal views on this trip after leaving Halifax will be the many lakes and rivers we pass as we progress towards Montreal, several of the Nova Scotian ones being seen as we get settled in. This also gives us the chance to take a look inside the Renaissance sleeper cabin. As mentioned earlier, the Renaissance cabins can hold up to 2 people, with it currently being set up in day mode. The seating area here can be converted to a bed, as we'll see later. As to be expected from 90s era built coaches, the seating is incredibly comfortable with a decent amount of padding, perfect for relaxing in for long periods of time during the day. The seats have foldable armrests, with there also being a foldaway table which can be used for placing meals and drinks if you don't fancy visiting the dining car. Underneath the seating area is where you can find storage space for luggage, which is quite common on British sleeper stock due to the limited space in contrast with European or North American coaches, but still, I was able to perfectly fit my hand luggage here with no problems whatsoever. Next to the window is where you'll find safety cards as well as further information about the ocean, as well as a foldaway table which is a bit difficult to manoeuvre with only one hand, but still, I somehow managed. All of the room's lighting is controlled using the switches to the left of the door, with the temperature control being just below this, which is particularly handy during the colder seasons, as this train was originally built for British winters, not the much harsher Canadian ones. Just above this is a peephole to see who's knocking at the door to add an additional layer of privacy. The room has 2 North American style 120-volt power sockets, which are next to the many storage cabinets in the room that can be used for placing items, the one here being for coats and jackets as indicated by the coat hangers, with others being just next to this on the window side. One of the 2 just next to the personal bin also has a door hanger placed to let the attendant know if you want your room made. The windows also have curtains, which are useful for when going to sleep. And last but certainly not least, there's the ensuite bathroom, which includes a toilet, a sink and a shower. We'll of course check out the shower more when it's time to use it the next morning. The sleeping berths on the Renaissance coaches may be smaller than other North American rolling stock, but they're packed with everything you need for a comfortable journey for long distance routes such as the ocean. A very nice place to kick back and relax. And as for sleeping, let's assess that in the morning. Relaxing in your room and taking in the scenery is a good way to spend your time on this trip, but there are also activities if you like to mix things up. An example of such being a welcome talk for the ocean, which took place around 12:30 Atlantic Standard Time in one of the Renaissance coach cars. Heading there, I was also able to admire the photos of the areas in which the ocean runs through, such as the vineyards of Nova Scotia. A nice touch. One other thing that was fairly noticeable was that some of the coaches looked rather run down in some areas, such as the lock on this out of order room and the corridor connections being rather difficult to get open. As you can see, I literally had to pry the door open just to reach the Renaissance seated car. Seating in the coach car is laid out in a 2x1 configuration like the new Mark V coaches on the Caledonian Sleeper, albeit with arguably more comfier seats. These are by far amongst the comfiest seats I've tried on a sleeper train, but you'll have to let me know below whether you would spend 22 hours in these. I doubt I would. Anyway, along with the history lecture of the ocean, wine was offered to the passengers, but as I don't drink, I was instead offered a mixture of Sprite and apple juice, with a toast then being made to the ocean. Cheers! Now, you wouldn't think it owing to how grey and uninspiring the station is, but our stop in Truro, Nova Scotia, is pretty significant. This is the most easterly train station in North America, and the curve we traverse as we leave is the furthest east any train goes on the entire continent. By the time we leave Truro, it's close to 1:30, which means it's time for lunch. The Renaissance sets used on the Ocean have two dedicated service cars, which were converted from regular sleepers by Via Rail. One acts as a lounge car, which is a nice place to relax and chill out, and whilst the TV is no longer functional, this and the dining car are the only two places on the train with Wi-Fi, which worked pretty well and was pretty easy to connect to. There's also a small kiosk where non-sleeper passengers can purchase food and drink, and if you're interested, I've linked the full menu in the description, but will instead be enjoying lunch in the dining car, with lunch, dinner and breakfast the next morning all being included in the cost of my sleeper ticket. Like on Amtrak long-distance sleeper routes, Via offers communal dining and the food is pre-prepared and heated on board the train, and whilst neither will be doing the numbers on Instagram, I personally prefer the Via offerings such as the chicken breast and lettuce here for lunch. Enjoying lunch in the dining car also reminded me of how much of a shame it is that the Night Star services these carriages were originally built for never came to fruition. International sleeper trains are undoubtedly a much needed addition to the British railway network and would provide useful links by train to mainland Europe. Also, side note, how cool are these fold down seats? I then made a reservation for 6 PM for dinner and sat back and enjoyed the scenery for a bit longer. The landscape here is really something, wouldn't you agree? Anyway, a quick walkthrough of the train. For some reason, the second Renaissance coach car had the seating taped and was not available for use by the passengers. Not sure whether this is a regular occurrence or if it was just a one-off, but feel free to comment down below if you have any further information. The coach carriage in use also features a fairly large wheelchair accessible space, as well as an accompanying PRM toilet, which, given the lack of passengers in the seated accommodation here, was very clean, though I've never really had any major issues on this front with Via during my time in Canada. One of the sleeper cars also has an accessible room, however this was occupied for the full route to Montreal, so no chance of a sneak peek inside, I'm afraid. The final Renaissance carriage before the HEP stainless steel cars was again converted from a sleeper car to solely act as a transition car for the otherwise incompatible knuckle coupling arrangement on the latter. Visiting here is still worth it though, as on display are the numerous flags not only of Canada itself, but also the Canadian provinces the Ocean passes through, such as Nova Scotia and Quebec. Also take note of the route map here, with ours being highlighted in blue, though this is fairly out of date. Gaspé, for example, hasn't had a rail service since 2013, but this is set to return at some point later in 2026 following the reconstruction of the railway line. The first two HEP carriages are seated cars, which unlike the Renaissance coach cars are laid out in a 2x2 configuration, and while some seats are taped off, it seems that passengers travelling in coach were placed here, presumably to avoid the events held in the Renaissance equivalent cars. As is also common with North American rolling stock, there are water dispensers at numerous points throughout the vestibules. I did also take the chance to have a look at the Chateau Sleeper cars, which had a mixture of seated, roomette and bedroom accommodations. These carriages were added around the same time as the famous parked car observation domes were taken out of service due to Via losing access to the turnaround loop at Halifax port, meaning it's not possible for the train to turn around to head back to Montreal, which is a shame as it does make the views a lot more spectacular. Anyway, whilst I didn't get a chance to properly try the Chateau cars on my last trip to Canada, I will hopefully be returning soon to give them a go. Stay tuned! We're now in our second Canadian province of this trip, New Brunswick, and on the approach to Moncton, something rather unusual happens. As you can see at the moment, we're passing the station, but soon after clearing it, we have to reverse onto the track to make the station call, the reason for this being due to the track layout in the station's area. The stop here is a smoke stop, and so far we're running on time, meaning we're given 15 to 20 minutes to hop off for some fresh air. This also allows the locomotives hauling our train the chance to be refueled, these being two of Via Rail's F40PH2D locomotives dating back to the 1980s. These are similar to the ones used by Amtrak in the US, albeit with a number of modifications to suit Via's operational needs. After a brief walk and time to admire the Renaissance coaches some more, it was soon time to head off again. As sunset drew closer, I headed to the service car and made use of the free Wi-Fi to catch up on some channel work as we continued through New Brunswick and on to Quebec.
May I have your attention please for those of you traveling in sleeper class? This is the first call for dinner in the dining car.
It's now 6 PM, which means it's time to head into the dining car for dinner. Personally, I found the dinner options to be much better than what was offered for lunch, and this time I went for the 3-course meal of tomato soup, haddock risotto and spinach, and cherry cheesecake for dessert. Absolutely delicious and a great way to end the first night of this 24-hour odyssey. After chatting with my dining car neighbour for a bit and tipping the attendant a few dollars for the great service, it was time to start getting ready for bed. Whilst you can get the attendant to make the bed up for you, I personally found it easier to do this myself, as lifting this lever here deploys the bed, and the pillows are already on the seats as you would have seen earlier. Both the mattress and pillows are pretty comfortable and will no doubt provide a great night's sleep as we arrive into Quebec the next morning. There's also a deployable cup holder here for a drink whilst lying in bed. Right, good night everyone. See you first thing in the morning.
Day 2.
I set my alarm for around 6 AM and to my surprise, we were still running on time. I had a pretty good sleep. The bed is a bit narrow given the Renaissance sets are built to the much tighter British loading gauge, but still, the overall comfort on offer was pretty great. It's quite dark outside at the moment, but the main reason I woke up this early was to witness the bridge we're travelling on now. This is the Quebec City Bridge, or Pont de Quebec, and the incarnation of the bridge we're travelling on now is the third and successful attempt at building a bridge over the lower St. Lawrence River. The first attempt was thwarted in 1907 following the collapse of the south arm and part of the bridge's central section, whilst the second attempt saw the central span fall into the river whilst in the raised position in 1916, with both of these attempts sadly killing a combined total of 88 workers. The third and successful attempt was opened 3 years later in 1919, and whilst originally built as a railway bridge, today it's used by a mixture of rail, road and pedestrian traffic. Upon crossing the bridge, we arrive into Sainte-Foy, which the ocean uses to serve Quebec City as opposed to downtown Gare du Palais used by Via Rail's mainline corridor trains. This prevents our train from taking a significant detour and performing even more reversals than what we're doing now, though Via does provide connecting shuttle buses for those continuing to downtown Quebec City. After our train completes its reversal and returns over the bridge, the sun starts to rise, and this is when I make use of the ensuite shower ahead of making it for breakfast. Thankfully there was plenty of hot water available and the pressure was fairly good too. Now if you'll excuse me. A gorgeous morning sunrise is now in view as we continue along the main corridor route towards Montreal, currently reaching around 130 km per hour or close to 80 miles per hour. Having made my bed, it was time to head back to the dining car for my last meal on board the Ocean, breakfast. Certainly a lot busier than my meals the day before. This time I went for some buttered toast, orange juice and some maple syrup French toast. When in Canada, eh? We're now on the home stretch towards Montreal and it's time to reflect. I really enjoyed my time on the Ocean and it was fun to finally get to try the ex-Nightstar coaches, which have been on my bucket list for many years now. This obviously isn't the fastest way to travel between Halifax and Montreal, but it's regardless a fantastic way to experience Canada and its rich history, and I thoroughly recommend adding this train trip to your list if you ever find yourself in the country. Via Rail's service and staff were amazing, and that really helped make it a journey to remember. My ticket for solo occupancy of my ensuite sleeper cabin cost me $877 Canadian dollars and 73 cents, which is around £478.40, booked just under 2 months in advance. When you consider the night you save getting a hotel, as well as all the meals being included in the ticket cost over the course of 24 hours of scheduled travel, that's pretty fair in all honesty. Definitely a lot cheaper than the cost of a roomette on an Amtrak train of a similar journey time and distance. We're now crossing the Victoria Bridge, with views of both track construction work and the city of Montreal in the distance, and with the REM running alongside us, we finally reached journey's end at Montréal Gare Centrale, a whole 3 minutes early at 09:51. Now you've heard from me, I want to hear from you. What did you think of Via Rail's The Ocean? Have you had a chance to ride it before, or has this video inspired you to give it a go? Let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, hype and share it to aid the channel's growth, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more content such as this weekly. Now it's time to get settled for a few days in Montreal ahead of moving on to my next destination. Thanks so much for coming with me on this trip, and I look forward to bringing you with me on my next one.